Hello everyone and welcome to another News Coolum video and another plug side chat. There's been chatter about bringing back the federal EV tax credit for automakers like Tesla and GM. And what they're proposing is basically adding 400,000 vehicles to the cap, but then shortening the phase out period. So instead of, I think it's 12 to 15 months that it takes to phase out, it would phase out in like 9. And so essentially what that would do is it would add 400,000 vehicles that Tesla and 400,000 vehicles that GM could sell for the full $7,500 tax credit. And, while that's better than nothing, because right now we have essentially two American automakers that led the EV adoption charge, if you will, in the United States, they're going to be at a competitive disadvantage to a bunch of foreign companies at this point. And I don't think that was the intent of the credit when it was first put in place. And again, adding 400,000 vehicles to each automaker would help. I don't think it changes some of the fundamental issues that I had with the federal tax credit in the first place. And in some ways, I would rather just see the credit scrapped and replaced with something that's more effective for the purposes of pushing electric vehicle adoption. And so in one of our electric vehicle advocacy forums that I'm a member of locally, they had mentioned this, and I had posted up the 5 things that I think are essential for an EV tax credit. And, I think that any lawmakers in Washington who are looking to revamp or augment the tax credit should consider including these 5 elements, because I feel that they're essential. And the first is we need to stop with it being a tax credit, right? If the point is to incentivize EV purchases, we need to make it a point of sale rebate. Now, I'm not really concerned how that comes out of the tax rolls, right? It could be a pass-through tax that the manufacturer gets, but it needs to be offered at the point of sale. And the reason I say that is, even if you have a tax credit, it doesn't change the fact that it's a barrier to entry for people who are with limited financial abilities. And then the other aspect is the way the tax credit works, you have to have $7,500 in tax liability in order to see the most effect out of it. So that's why it's essentially a regressive program. It assists those who are wealthy more than it assists those who are less wealthy. And so not only do you have to pay up front when you make less money, because your tax liability dictates how much you actually get back. If you're lower income, you actually see less back than someone who's higher income. At this point in time, I mean, it will depend on individual circumstances, but if you make less than $60,000 to $65,000 a year, I don't think you can actually see the full $7,500 back. And to put that into perspective, that's more than double what the median individual wage is. That means 50% of the people in the United States make less than half of what it would take to qualify for the full $7,500 credit. And, even if you were making $15 an hour, that's only $31,000 a year that you'd be making. You wouldn't even come close to qualifying for the full tax credit at that point. So it really does gear itself toward the wealthier individuals, and it doesn't really help the people who are really trying to get into electric vehicles, which is the mainstream car buyer. Now, the second thing that I would like to see done is, and this has been discussed by others, it needs to be capped across all automakers. It can't be you get 200,000, you get 200,000, you get 400,000, you get 400,000. That doesn't work. That's why our American companies at this point are at a competitive disadvantage. Those people that go to market first are going to be at a disadvantage to those who lollygag and wait around. We should not be incentivizing people to not sell electric vehicles. We should cap it at maybe 1 million, 2 million. I don't really care what the number is specifically. I do think it needs to end at some point. However, it needs to benefit those who get to market first. And, if the current trend follows and it capped at 2 million, it means that Tesla would probably get about 50% of it, and the other 50% would be split mostly between GM and Nissan and maybe a few others, but that's about it, right? Because everybody else is just waiting around. But under this current model, they can wait around for another 5 years and then take full advantage of it when it suits them best competitively, and putting, like I said, domestic companies at a disadvantage. Now, the other thing is, and I think GM has suffered as a result of this, I mean, don't get me wrong, it put a lot of volts on the road. However, I don't think that extended range electric vehicles, plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, definitely not hybrids, I don't think any vehicle with an internal combustion engine should qualify. We already subsidize fossil fuels enough. We shouldn't be providing a subsidy for fossil fuel driven vehicles. It doesn't make sense. If the program is to put electric vehicles on the road, we know that battery technology is capable now where you can make a long range, no compromise electric vehicle. There's no reason to be subsidizing hybrids and plug-in hybrids. They just shouldn't qualify for the credit, full stop. They shouldn't even be listed as a qualifying vehicle. Now, hydrogen fuel cells or fuel cell vehicles, that I consider a new technology, and even though I don't necessarily agree with it for personal transportation, the fact that it would qualify for a federal tax incentive I think would be perfectly fine. Just no need to be supplementing the internal combustion engine vehicle, which already dominates the market. Now, the fourth thing is, and this goes back to not wanting this to be a regressive program, I don't think any EV with an MSRP of over $40,000 should qualify, period. Again, if you can afford a $45,000 to $50,000 to $55,000 car, you don't need an incentive to help you purchase it. It just doesn't make sense. Why are we subsidizing people to buy really expensive luxury vehicles when the price difference between a luxury EV and a non-EV luxury car is minuscule, right? We don't need to be incentivizing that behavior. We need to be getting people into mass market EVs to put as many of them on the road as possible. And the final requirement would be that these EVs at least need to be available for purchase in all 50 states. Right now, the fact that there is no state requirement means that states like California or other zero emission vehicle states, other CARB states, they're getting the most benefit from these credits. And there's really no incentive for any electric vehicle automaker to sell their vehicles outside of these largest ZEV credit states. Now, if you are forced to at least make these vehicles available in all states, it's going to put them at the hands of people who might not normally have been able to get access to these electric vehicles. We saw this when the Bolt EV first came out. There's a group called the Bolt Smugglers, and because GM was only offering the Bolt EV in California at the very beginning, we had people in Utah, we had people on the East Coast, Virginia, Maryland, ordering these Bolt EVs and having them shipped out to them, people in Arizona, all sorts of states where they weren't going to get them delivered. They were buying them in California and having them shipped out. You shouldn't have to do that, right? These EVs, if they want to qualify for this tax credit, they need to be made available in all 50 states. So if you have some foreign company that's just coming in, sending a few hundred EVs a year, and they only want to sell them in California, well, too bad, you're not going to get to qualify for that federal tax credit or federal EV incentive credit. You have to actually make enough of an effort to provide them to all US states and all Americans where it's available for purchase. And so really my 5 limitations there would only actually be 3 EVs that I know of that would actually qualify for a federal tax credit under how I would set it up. And that's essentially the Bolt EV, the Nissan Leaf, and the Tesla Model 3, and only certain variations of the Tesla Model 3. And frankly, I think it's telling that those are the three EVs and the three automakers who have moved the most EVs total in the United States. So I'd love to hear what you think. What would you want to see in some sort of a federal EV credit or EV incentive? Do you agree with my five requirements for a updated federal EV credit? If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel, and thank you for watching.